longest-serving presidents facing a term in jail.
He's now in fragile health. His wife, Bernadette, dismissed reports that he's suffering from Alzheimer's disease, but he may find a court appearance arduous. The abuse of public funds charges spring from his time as mayor of Paris and salaries paid to so-called phantom employees at the town hall. The money was used as part of Chirac's drive for further power in the 1990s, at the end of his 18-year term as mayor.
Well, he finished his term as mayor of Paris in 1995, and after that he won 2 presidential elections in 1995 and in 2002. Now, the French public was very much aware of these very serious allegations against him of corruption. But it's a cultural problem in France. I think the French press is not strong enough. It didn't do a good job of holding him accountable.
A civil action is being settled by repayment of funds. Mr. Chirac lost his legal immunity against criminal charges after he retired. If found guilty, he could face a heavy fine and up to 10 years in prison. But in practice, he would be more likely to receive a small suspended sentence. Tim Friend, AlJazeera, Paris.
The trial of a prominent Indonesian cleric who's facing charges related to terror will restart on Thursday. This is after prosecutors rejected a statement from Abu Bakr Bashir's defense team. His supporters allege international involvement in the case. Bashir is accused of planning terrorism and funding a paramilitary training camp in Aceh. Japan's Prime Minister so far managing to stave off calls for an early election after his foreign minister quit for breaking the rules on political donations. Well, the quitting of the foreign minister on Sunday is the latest in a string of political scandals that's left many Japanese disillusioned with their leaders, and it leaves the Prime Minister in an increasingly shaky position. More from Steve Chow, who's in Tokyo.
At the Ogawa rubber mask factory, TV entertainers have replaced politicians on the assembly line. With 5 different prime ministers in 5 years in what is a seeming lack of leadership, there's been a growing disdain among Japanese for anything political.
Politicians' masks used to make up at least 50% of our orders. Now it's only 10%. The public feels politicians don't give us anything to look forward to.
That certainly is the current sentiment with Naoto Kan. The latest prime minister, less than a year on the job, has had approval ratings fall to a record low of 18%. He has so far ignored opposition calls for his resignation, stubbornly pushing through an unpopular budget.
We need to establish a fiscal policy that does not increase the debt. The hope people had for Khan and his party has changed to disappointment, despair, and now anger.
The DPJ party, of which Khan leads, was swept into power for the first time in 2009. Back then, the majority believed its promises of changing the way politics was run here, that politicians could be less about politicking and more about representing the people. With opposition groups vowing to block the carrying out of the budget, threatening to stall the runnings of government, analysts say Khan needs to act much more decisively.
He is seen to be in control. I think Japanese voters in general are still pretty much prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt.
But decades of economic stagnation has seen patience grow thin. And the fear is that before too long, the revolving door of leadership will herald in yet another new face into Japanese politics. Steve Chow, AlJazeera, Tokyo.
Going to update you on a couple of stories, the headline stories out of Libya. Then we're going to talk to a former ambassador from the country about what may be in store next. A couple of main points. The forces of the Libyan leader, Muammar Gaddafi, continuing to strike back hard against rebel positions. The rebels have been defending the important oil town of Ras Lanouf on Monday. The pro-Gaddafi counter-offensive seems for now to have halted any opposition advance on the capital, Tripoli. AlJazeera has learned that the British soldiers released by Libyan rebels on Sunday were captured after a firefight. 8 British nationals, including a diplomat and members of the elite military force, the SAS, were briefly captured after they landed in eastern Libya. Rebel forces How are they getting on? Let's talk to Oliver Miles, former British ambassador to Libya, joins me now live from Oxford in the United Kingdom. Ambassador, I don't know whether you can hear me, but I wanted to ask you, if you can, whether it's a surprise that the rebel forces now appear to be suffering some kind of setbacks after their early successes.
I can just hear you. I couldn't hear the report you had just now at all. You're asking whether it's a surprise that there's been a setback. The fact is that the information we have is very scanty. It's not at all clear. I bet it's not at all clear to the armies, if you can call them that themselves, just what's going on. The fact is that yesterday, or the day before yesterday, the Tripoli radio, Tripoli television announced that the pro-Gaddafi forces were going to move and take over 3 places which had fallen to the rebels: Zawiya, Misrata and Ras Lanuf. And they didn't succeed in any of those. Today we've had a different story. We've heard that there's been a lot of activity along the coast road between Sirte and Ajdabia. Bin Jawad is said to have fallen to the government forces. Bin Jawad itself is not a very important place, I don't think. I'm sorry, with all respect to the inhabitants thereof. It is important because it's the last town as you approach from the eastern part of Libya. It's the last town before you come to Sirte, which is the hometown and the stronghold, if you like, or personal stronghold of Gaddafi. So that's why they will have been very keen, the government forces will have been very keen to retake Bin Jawad. I don't think we've got enough to go on to say that the war has tilted against the rebels.
OK, I know this is such a broad brush question, perhaps you can't give me an exact answer, but what chance do you think the rebel forces have of toppling Gaddafi without outside help?
Well, it's really impossible to say. It depends on the loyalty of the forces, which seems to be in doubt. We've heard reports, certainly from the BBC and I think from other sources as well, that the use of air power has been pretty well ineffective. There have been suggestions that bombs which have been deliberately dropped so as to miss civilian population and even to miss military targets. If the morale of one side or the other cracks, then that will be the end of the matter, because this war is not going to be won by material, it's going to be won by morale. I think it was Napoleon who said, didn't he, that in warfare morale is to material as 4 to 1.
But it is going to be a long drawn-out affair, no doubt.
It looks like it, doesn't it? I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that since the confrontation began seriously in Tripoli, which was a bit later than the confrontation in other parts of the country,
I feel very rude having to interrupt you, sir, but I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Apologies for that. Now time for Riz Khan.